WPSC, Wayne, New Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, gobrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey.
This is
The innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless.
They have awesome variety.
The kick-ass.
I love Brave New Radio.
The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
Here's your North Jersey weather report.
All right now, today is Saturday the 16th. We're expecting a high of 81 and a low of 62 is a chance of rain in the Wayne, New Jersey area. Tomorrow, Sunday, 79 is a high, 62 is a low, expected to be partly cloudy, as well as on Monday, it's going to be overcast with a high of 75 and a low of 62. On Tuesday, we are expecting rain, 70 is a high, low of 63, and then on Wednesday, rounding out this forecast, 79 as a high, 60 as a low, expected to be overcast as well. My guess is we're probably getting a little bit of Jose. I think that's the last one. We had Irma, and now I believe Jose is coming up the line as well. So I saw last night that Jose was going to be from Florida to Maine, coming all the way up that East Coast, right? Coming like, I don't think it was going inland, but I think everything up on the East Coast of the United States from Florida to Maine was going to get a little taste of Jose. And probably whether it be rain or either the surges, if you happen to be on the coast out there in the beach areas, expect the waters to be a little bit higher, but that most likely is what's driving the next few days. All right, well, that is the weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center.
WP 88.7 FM. Brave New Radio. Brave New Radio.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do the disclaimer where it says the views and opinions heard on this show are solely those of the hosts and guests and may or may not be reflective of the studio owners. I want to say that as we go into the 7 o'clock hour because the reading circle time is here. My guest has joined me. She is on the line, called in right on time. I tell you, it's something about that 6:55 a.m. because all of the authors, 6:55 like clockwork. I look at the clock and it'll say 6:55. They call in right on time. And so I am always glad and appreciative and thankful for that because my guest this morning did the same. At 6:55, the phone rang. We had our little 5-minute briefing and she is on the air with me now. And it is none other than author Tori Lynn. Now, I tell you, I'm excited for a lot of different reasons with this interview this morning, because one thing, it's something that many of you have heard me say when we've had various guests on the line in terms of taboo subjects. That's one of her books. Her latest book is Taboo. She also has a book, The Divorce. That's another thing I can relate to and we can talk about, as well as other issues. And the other thing is I just like that name, Tori. I like that name, T-O-R-Y. I like that name, Tori Lynn. That's caught my eye right off the bat whenever I was on social media. And then after I saw what she writes about, really caught my name. And one day I just popped her a message and say, hey, how would you like to appear on the show? And she hit me back and said, sure. And we scheduled today's date and she's here. And that is none other than speaker, author, Tori Lynn. That's T-O-R-I-L-Y-N-N. Tori, welcome to the Reading Circle.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. And folks, she is joining us out of Memphis, Tennessee. And before she came on the air, I was sharing with her, I am like a humongous Martin Luther King Jr. fan. And those in the listening audience, you already know that because I tell you that all the time. We've actually had some of Martin's family on the air. We had his nephew and we've had his niece. We've had, let me see who else, a couple other folks in his family as well. I'm trying to get his daughter and his nephew said he's going to get her for me. So at some point I may have Bernice on the line as well, but humongous Martin Luther King fan. I have studied him left, right, up, down. And as soon as Tori said she was calling out of Memphis, I said, oh my God, the Lorraine Motel. I've got to get there. I've got to get to that museum to see Memphis. And it has other things, other attractions as well. Because I know the food down there is good. That I know.
I haven't been here. I've been to a couple of places, yes. I've just been here. My mom and sister are here. So we've been to a couple of places, but I cook and my sister cooks.
Well, okay, then so my statement still stands. I know the food is good then. I'm looking at your website. You look like you can cook.
Thank you.
If there's such a thing as looking like you can cook. Well, yeah, you look like you can cook. So I tell you, with that in mind, along with that, I'm gonna allow you to introduce yourself. Let the folks know who you are. And before the interview is up, they're really gonna know who you are. Because by the time I finish asking questions and we talking about your work, they'll get a really good idea of who you are. But talk to me a little bit about who is Tori Lynn.
Well, Tori Lynn is an author, a speaker, a filmmaker, an actress, and a bomb mommy. Yes, and that's my proudest. Is that a word? Is it proud is a word? Or most
yeah, it's
proud?
Close.
I'm sorry, I do have a degree.
That's all right. It's early in the morning. By the way, out of Memphis is they're an hour behind. So it's like 7:07 here. It's probably 6:07 there. But I have had guests that call from the West Coast. It's like, I guess 4:07 there now, 3 hours behind. But I understand it's early, so we get it. And yes, if it's not words, we'll make them up. It's okay.
Okay, good. Okay, I appreciate that because I might make a couple of words up. But yeah, so and my daughters are authors as well. Both my daughters and my sister and my mom. So we're all authors. So that's pretty cool as well.
Wait a minute, you all write?
Yes, all of us write.
Okay, because usually my first question, which you kind of segued and leading me into, is where did it all begin? So who started writing first? Did you write and then the other ones caught on, or was it the other way around? Your mom and everybody else was writing, and then you kind of followed suit. Where did this whole writing thing come from?
It actually came from my mother. She has a book called The Black Woman's Attitude and Men Who Wants to Love Us. So she came first. And when I got her book, and I was like, you know what, Mom, I'm going to tell my own story, and so that's how it, and I was, social media was my catharsis. I would get online and I would put on, do a Q&A every day. And I was so amazed at the people that were chiming in like clockwork. Every time they knew I would do a post, and they would chime in. And it was always about relationship because I was going through a divorce. And I just thought, that was another reason for me to write the book, because there were so many people suffering in silence. And so many people had questions. So many people felt like they were alone and were glad that they weren't going through this alone. And I was surprised at the amount of men that were trying to get answers about their relationship as well.
All right. So that interesting in terms of, because I'm trying to think now, out of all the years I've been on the show, have I had a family of authors? Because that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, as a child, okay, let's go all the way back then. When you were a child, was reading and writing and all that stuff emphasized in the home? And the reason I ask that is because this show, the whole reason it came about 16, 17 years ago was to generate interest in reading. In other words, I really don't care what folks read, long as they're reading something. And so I always, when I'm talking to authors, try to get a feel for, was there reading and writing going on in the house as a child? Is it something you took up in school or high school or college or whatever? Kind of, how did that become like something you wanted to do? Because I deal with kids every day that you would think they were going to the guillotine when we asked them to read and write.
Well, absolutely not. No, I'm actually the first one in my family to graduate from college, and that was just 2005. So I'm the first person. So reading and education was not the biggest deal. I think all of us have high school diplomas, but no, education was not the thing. Like, okay, everybody, once you get out of school, you're going to go to college. That was not a big deal to us. Everybody, either did their thing with between doing hair, working at, AT&T, or going to the military. But reading and education was not a big deal in our family. And I think that it hit and missed few of us in like dyslexia.
Right.
As far as, yeah. So it as a matter of fact, it got my 9-year-old, and she's an author, but it is still a struggle for her at this time. So now that I've got her tested and realized it's dyslexia, now we're having to go another direction and try to figure out how she learns. So sometimes I don't know if it's the fact that, like my sister is an avid reader. She is, but she's like super smart, But as far as me and a couple of us, it wasn't a big deal because like me growing up, I just really thought I was kind of dumb because I couldn't figure out, like I would have to read the same thing like 5 times before I understood what I was reading.
Right.
And so I just kind of lost interest after a while. Now that I've really, we picked this up with my daughter and people in technology, and, people are testing kids and stuff like that. Now I realize that there's a such thing as dyslexia. But at the time, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I just kind of thought I was dumb. And now I realize that, okay, that she's going through the same thing I was going through. Well, now there's a such thing called dyslexia. So no, reading in the home was not a big deal. No, not at all.
Okay, that's somewhat counter, but at the same time, it's not the first time I've heard it. And what's really interesting is the fact about the challenge in terms of dyslexia, because for a lot of people, because I know I get redundant in the listening audience, they're like, oh my God, he says that every week. But whenever I'm not doing radio, my day job is principal of a school. So I deal with teachers and kids daily. And there is a population, the special education population, that once it's been identified, there's special services and things that they can get. They can get tutors and specialists and this, that, and the other. But there are a lot of times where folks don't know they have these things. And everybody, and everybody's coming at them as if, why aren't you getting this?
Right. It's stressful. It causes anxiety, which is the reason I had my daughter tested, because this eczema just spread all, she was, we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and she was ready. It was supposed to be time to take the Georgia's milestone.
Right.
And she freaked out. And it was so bad that after I dropped her off, I went to my doctor and I was crying and I was bawling. And I said, I feel like a bad parent because she had to take this test and I had to make her take it. And she, and, by the time she got in that evening, I think the next day I saw like her, both arms was covered in rashes. And that's what made me take her in, because the anxiety attack was so bad. And I didn't know she had anxiety, or maybe that was the onset. So, that was it, just like, I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't read like everybody else. And, kids make fun of me, and like that kind of stuff like that. So it's discouraging. You don't want to read after a while because you feel like that's my dumb area. Like for me, I knew I was talented in other areas. I was gifted and talented, but to me, it was a struggle to read, and it was just discouraging. I just did not want to do it. I didn't. And my daughter, when I saw the same signs later, I realized, oh my gosh, that's what I was dealing with the whole time. So if I'm 40, I'll be 41 on Friday. So
happy birthday.
Thank you. But if I had realized that was something, then maybe, someone could have, did some interventions to find out how I learned and, implemented a 504 plan or IEP have now. But at the time, we didn't have that, and it was just discouraging. I hated school. I hated it.
Wow. Because, and interestingly enough, you brought up gifted and talented, because what most people, and I know people outside of education don't know it, and some people inside of education don't realize it, but gifted and talented is the other end of the special education spectrum.
Right.
Like special education ranges all the way up the line to gifted and talented. And you could very well be, and for listening audience, if you don't realize that, exactly what Tori just described, you could very well be in gifted and talented and be struggling with reading or math or whatever because of something else that's going on with you physically, or that's going on with you mentally or what have you, that's beyond your control. That's why I said a couple of minutes ago, for a child in that situation, it does not surprise me that your daughter had the anxiety attack or the stress, because people are probably, teachers and other classmates are probably coming to her and say, look, we've said this 15 times. How come you haven't got it yet? Or the frustration level. And she's kind of like, it's not that I'm not trying to get it. I am. It's just not clicking.
Yes. And after a while, because at some point our teacher said, well, now she's not even trying. So like I said, at the time, I wish the school would have kind of caught it earlier and said, hey, look, let's get it. Let's test to see what's going on. But I had to end up taking her to the doctor. The doctor said, look, I'm going to make a referral for her to go to a psychologist and get her tested. But a whole year of her struggling, it wasn't caught until the Georgia milestone and the whole anxiety thing. And I ended up having to take her to a private psychologist. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you had at least the wherewithal to do that, because unfortunately and sadly, a lot of the parents I deal with don't have the wherewithal to do even that much. I mean, if we don't catch it, they don't catch it. And then the kid just flounders. I tell you what, I have to play what we call a public service announcement, a PSA anyway.
Okay.
And actually, I played it in the last hour, but this one is you'll relate to this one, and the title of it is called Two Sides. And you'll hear why in a minute. And it's dealing with exactly what we're talking about. So as I play this, I'm sure you will relate to it. It's called Two Sides.
Today we decided to walk to school. At the corner, we waited to cross the street. The stoplight counted down. 15, 14,
31, 13.
We took a left on Carroll Garden Street.
Garden Street?
Loud music was coming from a car. Danny's a smart kid, but he gets so distracted.
There were so many other sounds, I didn't know what to focus on.
Danny, earth to Danny. Suddenly, he realized he forgot his homework again.
I left my homework on the table.
At the school steps, we hugged goodbye. I really hope he doesn't have another bad day at school today.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. That's why there's Understood.org, a free online resource for the parents of the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues. Get personalized recommendations, practical tips, daily access to experts, and more. Go from misunderstanding to Understood.org. Brought to you by Understood and the Ad Council.
All right. Well, that is the PSA I had to play anyway, but Tori, I'm sure you could relate to that.
Absolutely, yes.
And see, and again, that's an issue that we deal with as well. Now, that's not the primary things that we were going to be talking about this morning, but I'm glad we had an opportunity to share that as well. And in spite of it all, because this is the redemptive piece, this is the inspirational piece. In spite of it all, Tori and her family members are all authors. They all have books out there.
Yes. Oh, can I say something really quick?
Yes, please.
My mother has a 7th grade education, and she's a published author.
See, that's what I'm talking about. See, again, for me, what that says is it can be done. Mm-hmm. Yes. Because a lot of times folks will use whatever the obstacle or the challenge is as a crutch. They'll use that as an excuse of why it can't be done, when the truth of the matter is, well, if you really want to do it, you'll do it. I mean, you'll figure out the help that you need. I mean, there are people out there who can help you with editing. There are people out there that can show you the way in publishing, so on. So if you really want to get it down, you can. And in 2017, the technology that is available to us. Right. I had an author one time that said something that I hadn't even thought about. And even though I'm familiar with voice recognition technology, it just hadn't dawned on me in terms of that's a way to write a book. So what the author said was, I wrote my book for the most part each morning on my commute. I would take my phone or whatever device he had, and he would talk his book into it, and it would do the typing and everything for him. So all he had to do now was go back through it, what he had said in the morning while sitting in the car, go back through and do the editing and everything. But as far as him sitting down at the keyboard, he said he didn't have to keyboard anything. He did everything through voice recognition.
Wow. And
so I said, wow. Yeah, that's the same thing I said. I never thought about it that way. You can just sit there and kind of put the mic on and talk your thoughts out and get your whole book down. So the technology is available to us. So Tori is billed as a relationship and romance author, and she has a book called The Divorce. And I know the latest one is Taboo. Is there another one beside Divorce, or are these the two?
These are the two.
They're the two.
There was
Okay.
one called The Battle.
The Battle?
Yes.
Okay.
There is one out. I mean, it's not published yet, but The Battle is already written, and some people are aware that there is one called The Battle. But for some reason, I just have not released it. I think I know my reasons, but it's the other side of the divorce.
Yeah,
so after you go through the divorce, you go through the battle. Like the battles happen after the divorce.
Oh,
not during the divorce.
Yes.
Because now you got to go through the whole emotional part of separating everything. You got to go through the whole part of the child custody. You got to go through the whole part of who's going to pay child support. So that battle came after the divorce. That judge made that gavel.
And see, we're going to talk about it because, see, this is another topic, and I'm very transparent, there's really not too much filter for me. I try to filter as much as I can because I know it's radio and I don't want to get thrown off the air. But I'm very transparent in certain issues, and the divorce is one of them because it's near, because I went through one as well. And what I tell people all the time is I don't wish that experience on anyone.
Oh, my gosh.
And at the same time, I don't wish anyone to be dead or in jail or in misery either. So it's kind of one of those things that, if it gets to that point where it's going to end up in death or jail, then if you don't have a choice and divorce is the only way out, then it is what it is. But at the same time, I don't wish that on anyone. I really don't. And that's why it was interesting that you said whenever you were putting out the posts in social media that you were getting so many hits from men, because folks, for whatever, I know how we're socialized. Folks don't think that men feel. They think men are callous. They think men have no feelings. Matter of fact, I've read a bunch of books about how, the women don't even want a man to have, even though they say they do, they really don't. But the bottom line is, men are human beings just like women are. And truth be told, the feelings are not that much different. It's just how we have to express them based on what society says we should express them. So I'm not surprised that men were beginning to hit you up either, because depending on the man, unless he's just a true, just heartless, that just don't care, depending on the man, he suffers just as much as the woman, but people don't realize that.
Right.
They really don't. And I'm speaking from my standpoint. Again, I can say I don't wish it on anyone, because you're absolutely right about the battle. A lot of times people think it was some battle prior to divorce, but that battle prior to divorce ain't nothing compared to the one after.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, that there is a battle out that I just have not released yet. I think because I went to, there is something called the battle. I did write the battle right after I wrote the divorce, but because of so much that was in it, because like I said, after the judge banged the gavel is actually when the divorce really, the battle really started, with the child support, child custody, and then arguing, and our children were so young, and the division, now the church is involved, the family, who's picking sides. It was a nightmare.
No, it is a nightmare. For those of you listening, if you're considering it, try not to, if possible, because I'm going to constantly reiterate, as bad as we're getting ready to tell you that divorce is, it's still not as bad as being killed or having to go to jail for killing someone.
Right.
And so that battle that we're talking about, the one prior to the divorce, if that battle gets to that point where you're thinking about killing that person, then you know what, you're better off with the divorce. But short of that, if you can work it out and really push through it, I highly recommend that, because as Tori was just saying, that battle afterwards is no joke. And then when you throw church into the mix, because that's what attracted me to Taboo, is because there's a lot, including divorce, these subjects in many churches is like off limits. And yet the church is experiencing the same thing that the quote unquote world is experiencing. You're talking, like I see here where you're talking about the divorce rate is just as high in the church, 50+%, than it is out in the so-called world. So when you throw the church into the mix, that was my issue as well. My former wife and me, we grew up in the same church. We dated in the same church. Everybody knew us. We were like the perfect couple, so forth and so on. So when everything fell apart, first off, there was a whole bunch like, what? It was like, there was positions we had in there. I went to the pastor and said, look, if you want me to step down, I'll step down. Yada, yada. It was crazy. And so I know exactly what you're going through. Matter of fact, I'm looking at the description of the book where it says the divorce. Tori, through her eyes, takes you on the spiritual, emotional, and mental journey she encountered while going through her marriage and subsequent divorce. Through all the pain and suffering, she appeared tough on the outside, but behind closed doors, she secretly cried out for God to save her marriage. A marriage that she later realized was doomed from the beginning because he wasn't, quote, the one, unquote. From the joyous and exciting way they met in church, oh boy, to 2 children, oh wow, we got a similar story, and court battles later, Tori lost everything, her homes, her business, her faith, and her self-esteem. She lost trust with those she loved, from family, church, and even God. Tori literally walked through the valley of the shadow of death as the enemy told her that suicide, was her only way out. With the divorce, quote unquote, be prepared to laugh and cry for the emotional roller coaster that leads to her survival. Well, wow. It's almost like I could take out Tori and put in Mark, and take out her and put in him.
Right.
But it's that kind of roller coaster. It is for those of you who've never suffered through a divorce, it is very hard to capture all the emotions and everything that go with it. So Tori has done that in the book. Now, what was it like for you now? Because I journaled. I have stored away probably like 20, 25 journals of that period, that time period in my life. I mean, filled from cover to cover. So I understand the benefit of writing things down and getting it out. But what was it like for you now to put it down in a document that was now going to be available to the public?
You're talking about the battle, right?
Either one, the battle or the divorce.
I think I didn't understand the question. Are you saying it is... Okay, ask me again.
The question was, what was it like for you putting down on paper all that personal emotion that was now going to be a public document, is available for anybody to read?
Okay, can you hear me?
You're fading out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, I hear you now.
Okay. Well, what was it like? Well, it was a lot. Well, I didn't too much care about what back about it at that time, because what I saw, it was so many people that was going through relationship problems and going through battles and going through. So what I really more focused on the things that it would help as far as people versus the because it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of information, and a lot of people that read it said that I was very, very transparent. And at one point, I was almost embarrassed because I thought I was too transparent, because I went through one part where I talked about what I was thinking as my husband and I were being intimate. And at one point, he raised up and said, "Who are you thinking about?" And that was kind of like, oh, my gosh, I'm thinking about somebody else. But by this time, it was our relationship had gotten bad. It had gotten to this point where, like, now, my love for sex was cool. So my love for sex was good, and so that probably just was probably the reason why we kept having sex. But at the same time, I started thinking about a past relationship. So that was one thing, and I described what I was feeling. In the book, I described what I was feeling. I thought I would describe what I was thinking. But the funny part about it is he caught it. He's seen it. And that's so funny how the devil makes you think about, like, your past relationship as if it was something like, if it was that good, you would probably still be in it.
Right.
But there was another part that I had thought I would talked about as far as us being intimate, and I was holding my weeks-old baby, and I was very, very, very transparent on that. I mean, like, how he started and how we finished it. How I was mad afterwards because I wanted my husband back, but at the same time, we were separated. So then I started feeling like, oh, this dude is using me. Even though he was my husband, I felt like, okay, he's using me. So, so I was going through a whole emotional roller coaster because he was my husband. So he's my husband. Yes, I think I should have sex with him. But yet, okay, now I feel like a piece of meat because this dude go come and have sex with me and then go home or go wherever he was going because, like I said, we were separated.
Right.
So it was that type of thing. But as far as, like, I was very transparent and probably a little bit too raw on describing how we end up having sex at that moment. So the divorce is very, very transparent, even emotionally, what I was thinking about, how I thought about suicide, how, I was very, very transparent. I think some parts of it I was too transparent. But by that time, people had read it, and it was so, it was like really healing for a lot of people. So that's why I appreciate it more.
Well, like you were saying about about the devil, about the enemy, about Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call it. One of the tricks is to make people feel like they're the only one on the planet going through it. And that's a lie. I mean, there's really, as the Bible said, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing. So divorce is not new under the sun. We're not the only one. But when you're in it, it does feel like you're the only one. Right. It really does. And all those emotions that you describe, they are definitely in there. Not to mention, like I said, once you throw the church in the mix, if you're in the church, you feel like all eyes are on you.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, especially everybody know who you are. They know who both of you are. And so if you're in there, and I'm seeing where you say you met there as children in church and what this, that, and the other, or teenagers, folks know who you are. So you got that to contend with. Folks are talking about you, even though you think they're not talking about you, but they are. And then, like I said, you got that whole battle of, do we try to work this thing out? Do we get, because that's where the whole thing, even when you're separated, you kind of come back together again. Like, okay, maybe, all right. But it's just, it just ain't there.
Right.
And so then, you have to deal with everything else that comes along. And now I also see you had the 2 children. I tell you, if it's one area that's like really crazy, and I tell people all the time also, is we have no clue the impact that divorce has on children. Now, my children were relatively young at the time. Whenever I was going through mine, it was 15 and 10, I think. 15 and 10. No clue. And I deal with kids every day who's in similar or worse situations. But we have no clue of what divorce does to kids, because they don't know how to express what they're feeling. They don't know how to be. And the other thing is, psychologically, most kids think they're the reason for the divorce for whatever reason.
Right.
That comes to their mind that they were the ones that caused it. Like, mommy and daddy's not together because of us. And that drives them silly. I mean, I can remember when I was going through my separation and divorce, I was working in a school, and kids of separated parents or divorced parents, they would do stupid stuff with the hopes that it would bring their mother and father to the school. That was their intent. That was their motivation. I'm going to do this because I want the principal to call my mommy and daddy, so both of them will have to come to the school together. They will see each other, and they're going to get back together. In their little second and third and fourth grade minds, they thought that's how it worked.
That's true.
So yeah, it was really, I mean, it was, I like, why did you do that? Because, I wanted you to get my parents here. Oh, but and that's in like a second, third, and fourth grader mind. That's in their mind. I'm saying, when separation and divorce of parents, it really messes with kids' minds more than we know. And that's why whenever we start talking like these so-called taboo topics, especially within the church, as I said before we got on the air, if there ever was a place some of these things, no, all of these things ought to be dealt with, it's in the church. In my mind, there should be no such thing as a taboo topic in church.
Right. Absolutely.
So in terms of that, and this is the reason I say that. Let's stay with the divorce line before I move into taboo.
Mm-hmm.
As I just said, it screws up kids royally. So in my mind, I would think, okay, somewhere within the church, because like you just said, the divorce rate with those who are in church is just as high as those who are not. So you would think some type of ministry or some type of service, like let us put something together for children who are going through divorce. Let's deal with that. Let's deal with that head on. Let's put something together for couples who are going through divorce in the church. Let's deal with that. And it may not, I mean, the pastor may or may not be trained in that, but maybe they can get somebody to come in the church or work the ministry or get the groups together or whatever. But I'm saying all that to say, I would rather see that than to, oh, no, we can't talk about that. Tori, are you still there? Or did I lose you again?
No, I'm here with you. I'm here with you. I was answering some questions as far as like people are asking, like, what do you think about this? I was asking some questions, but I'm listening to everything you're saying. And my mom, she's been divorced 3 times. So 2 of those times I was there. I was born by this time, and I witnessed them. And as far as respect for men was not there.
Right. See, there you go. Bingo. See, right. You're a living example of what I'm talking about, because if you look at the studies, you look at the research, it gets into, especially with the girls, more so than the boys. But again, I won't even take it off of the boys, because I think that's a societal thing again. But more so for the girls, it really kind of gets them screwed up in terms of now in the future, how they relate with their relationships.
Right. Because like my thing is that I actually never really had seen a balanced American family, if you will. So I know that the women in my family, everybody are workers. Everybody, have either their own business, like between daycares, janitorial service. Everybody was pretty much doing, on the grind, and like. We have men in our family that are on their grind, but the people that, that I was around, except my grandfather, but the ex-husbands that I was around, and let me just say the very last ex-husband. Let me take my mom out because she'll be like, "Why are you talking about me on the radio?" Let me say this. I just didn't really have a lot of respect for men after a certain time.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah, it just wasn't, it's just like, man, either, like my grandmother used to tell me, there's nothing, you can never outdo a man physically, but a man can never outdo you emotionally.
Right.
And so it was just always kind of like this competition thing between men and women. To me, I just thought, and it just really wasn't, the women in our family are pretty dominant. But yet, what I realized when I got married, I picked a man that I was able to dominate.
Right.
So like, it just was the lack of respect was there. Now at 41, would I choose the same man that I would choose as I did at 28? No, absolutely not. Because there's a lot to come in it, and just love only does not keep the mortgage people from trying to call you and come, or the people trying to come pick up your car. So, but yeah, as far as like my dad, my ex-husband was no different than my dad. So him, being in between jobs and marrying him out to his mom's house, like that was no big deal. I mean, I had already been there. That was normal for me. So my respect for men was just not really the best at that time.
But you know what? Again, you have just proved in real time, in real life, what the studies and the research show. That is exactly what happens. And that's because I have two daughters by my first marriage, and I'm remarried, and my wife was divorced as well, who had two daughters. So I have 4 children in the life who have experienced divorce, and they're all girls, all 4 of them. And my issue is exactly that. I always kind of wonder as they enter into their relationships, how they're impacted by what they went through in terms of their parents divorcing. And I know it's going to impact. I know from the deepest part of me exactly what you just said. Somewhere in there, something very similar is going to occur. If not that, something else. And that's what I was talking about earlier, that we have no clue. No, we don't even scratch the surface of how divorce impacts the kids. But I will continuously go back to say, even with talking to the kids, well, look, would you rather have one of your parents dead and the other in jail? Or would you rather have them both alive where you can talk to them and go to them? And because you cannot, I can't emphasize that enough. I am not an advocate for divorce, but I am not an advocate for someone being killed or going to jail behind killing somebody either. And it can get like that battle you're talking about, them battles can get to that point. See, now, I don't want to go too far off topic, but everybody always knows, and I get into serious heated debate about O.J. Simpson. Personally, and I've stood on this and publicly, privately, anywhere. Personally, I pretty much know O.J. killed that girl. And it was in one of those. It was in one of those battles. That's why I know. Because when you get into a heated battle like that, your mind and body does things normally it would not do, and it does it very quickly. You don't even know how strong you are until you're engaged in one of those battles. And so I tell people, OJ was old at that time, and he was only like 41, 42. He couldn't run that fast. I said, oh, yes, he could. And what you call? Oh, he couldn't. He didn't have that much strength. Yes, he did. Because when you get angry like that, it is uncanny, the strength, the speed, and everything else that you get.
We were foster parents when in Oklahoma City, which is where I'm from. And I remember out of all the therapeutic children that we had, hands down, even the ones that we had, one little girl who had herpes around her mouth, and she was only 6 years old. So I'm saying even worse than that, every last child, the worst cases, I'm not saying the worst child, but the worst cases where they were dealing with so much anger was the ones that had been abandoned.
Right. That's absolutely right.
The strength of this one particular little boy, and he had to be, I think he was 9 or 10, and when he would get angry, it would take us to just kind of like climb over him.
Right.
So they wouldn't hurt or throw things or turn over couches and stuff. I could not believe how strong that little boy, as young as he was, I could not believe it.
No, you're right. That anger is something, and you just popped something into me that I knew it, but again, when people bring it to your mind, it hits you a different way. You just said the word abandonment, and abandonment cuts or at least the feeling of abandonment. Because in my case, I never abandoned my kids, but they feel like I did. And because they feel like I did, they react a certain way. But abandonment cuts deeply, and it stays there for a long time. And the other piece that you just threw at me was, that's what, again, I'm dealing with my kids at the school. Because many of them are coming up in single parent homes. Either they never knew their father at all, or he comes around, as we used to say, on Mother's Day, the first of the month or whatever, or his uncle this or uncle that. I mean, we have kids that are dealing with some major league issues, and you just hit one of them right square on the head, that whole abandonment thing.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right in terms of like, because people look at me like, oh, come on, a second grader did that? Yes.
Oh, my gosh. A kid could be that strong. Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
And just Jordan, it was, he had been abandoned, and he was angry. He was so angry. And the strength, he was so strong. And it would take us to, like, lay our bodies on top of him, like one is up here and one is down here, and then somebody grab his legs, because he would just, he was so strong.
And I know you're not exaggerating. For those in the listening audience, she is not exaggerating. I've seen it myself. I've seen.
That's the. I mean, he wasn't even a big kid.
No, they don't have to be. They do not have to be. I've seen a kindergartner destroy a class, turning desks over, and then got to the main office, turned the main office out, threatened the security guard he was going to kill her son. Now, this is a kindergartner, mind you. Told the security guard, I'm going to kill your son. And then when we had to call the police. People look at me like, Mark, are you kidding me? You called the police on the kindergarten? Yes, I did. And when the police got there, he got up on the counter and told him, shoot me now.
Oh, my gosh.
True story. True story. Not made up. True story. But like you just said, the anger issues and abandonment is a lot of it, because in my school, we do a big thing on love because of that. I mean, when I talk about we emphasize love, we really emphasize love. Matter of fact, our new mantra this year, because every year we have a different mantra that the whole building has to say every morning. Our new mantra this year is I am great, I am loved, and I can learn anything. So every kid in the building has to say that before we start our school day. I am great. I am loved. I can learn anything. But we do that because of exactly what you're doing. We're trying to combat that kind of anger.
Right.
And see, there again, that's why in my mind, as those of us who are in these various churches, I'm not saying the church is not doing all it can do, but the church can do more in some areas in terms of where we are in 2017 of addressing some of these issues. And that's why I said earlier, there ought not be one subject that's quote unquote taboo in church. And I'm looking here as I transition to that book, I'm looking at the description of it. It says, this book is for the single, engaged, and married. And if your marriage is stagnant, or if you want to give your spouse or yourself permission to be a freak, you want to read this book. Many men want and marry the good girl, but those same men may cheat on the good girl with the freak. Why? See, that's interesting right there, because even when we were talking about the whole divorce piece, because that's the other thing that always kind of amazed me, because, when we look at celebrities and we say, I can't believe he divorced that fine something, or I can't believe that good looking man she divorced. Clearly looks, like you said earlier, looks and some other things that people think keep people together, it don't.
Right.
Because like if we were to, and folks, I'm using this as an example. It is not true. As Donald Trump can say, it is fake news. But if someone were to now say Jay-Z and Beyonce were getting divorced, I know every brother in America is like, what, he leaving that? But I'm saying all that to say it's not the looks. It's not the shape. It's not the sex. It's not when it's not working, it's not working. And so that's why she says here, those same men may cheat on the good girl with the freak. Why? The church divorce rate is 50% and the world's divorce rate is 50%. See, there you go. That's because the world is taking half of y'all's churchmen, a friend says. Marriage is a wedding gift from God, and the two becoming one is a form of worship. So minister to your spouse. God calls marriage good and the marital bed undefiled. So there is a how-to guide for the good thing. Taboo also discusses topics that many believers may not ask or the church may not address. Is pleasing your mate a sin? My wife doesn't want to have sex with me anymore. Men, we, parentheses, women, close paren, don't touch things that we don't like. Number 4, what you won't do, another will do. Number 5, how to please your mate, and that's adult content, paren, close, open. Taboo was also written. See, here's some other issues too. Taboo was also written to bring awareness to issues like how some sexual addictions start. Infidelity, molestation, forgiveness, and intimacy, with hopes to better understand the opposite side. Hopefully, this will answer questions and bridge gaps between the church and the family, the parent and the child, the husband and the wife. Tori Lynn is not a minister, so if you're not ready for what you're about to read, put the book down. Everyone else, put your big britches on, grab your church fan, and get ready to clutch your pearls. Let's talk adult content. Now, see, me, in my crazy mind, I would do like a book study in church on this. Because again, everything that you just mentioned is going on. Sexual addiction, infidelity, molestation. And then, of course, once the things are found out, you got to figure out how to forgive. You know, let's look at this thing of called intimacy. But these are also the things that when you get to church, everybody's so holy and sanctified and saved and this, that, and the other. Oh, no, we don't talk about that. Oh, no. And that's what I was saying earlier, which I think you might have cut out before we went on the air. I said, you have church officers and ushers and everybody else that have 10 and 15 kids. And my question is, well, if sex is so taboo, how'd they get here?
Right.
How did your 5 children get here? The pastor with 5 and 10 kids. How did they get here? If that is such a taboo subject.
Right. How did the pastor get here?
How did we get here? And I'll say, that's why I said, for me, none of this stuff, I'm not a minister either. I'm not a pastor either. But if I were and had a church, not a one of these topics would be off limits. Because the only way you get healed in them, the only way they get better, the only way the situations change for the better is you got to start facing it and addressing it. I think there's a book title, you got to fix it to face it.
Right.
So the only way you can fix these issues, like the whole thing you just talked about with molestation, it blew me away over the years, the number, more so female authors than males, but the number of authors that on this show would be very transparent and admit that they were molested as kids. I was blown away. Probably 70-75%, might even be higher than that, of the guests that I've had on here somewhere along the conversation admit that they were molested whenever they were. Some said by their grandfather, some said by their uncles, by their next door neighbor, by this. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
They knew.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. That's something that needs to start being addressed. We need to start getting, let's start dealing with this molestation issue, because it's not just out there in the world that this is happening.
Right.
And for those
inside the house.
Right. And for those who have been molested, we need to be doing something with them, because all these different things that we just talked about drives behavior.
Right. Absolutely. And I addressed that in Taboo. I talked specifically about it. I spoke specifically on chapter 3. I knew by the age of 9, I'm trying to be careful because my daughter slept with me last night. But I knew by the age of 9 that I had an addiction. By the age of 9, I had an addiction.
And you knew.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. And age of 9. By the time I was 9 years old, I had an addiction already. You'll read it. You'll see it.
Oh, I'll have them downloaded before the end of the day, because they're on the Kindle, and I download them on my iPad, and that's where I read them. But I will have Divorce and Taboo downloaded, because, like I said, I've read the excerpts of it, and it's after the interview where I really get a chance to sit down and read the whole thing. And I'm not sure which way it works, but for me, it's always worked to read after, because I've actually talked to the author by that time, and now as I'm going through it, I have a whole different perspective but I've done it both. Every now and again I get a chance to read it before, depending on how far out we schedule. But yeah. I will definitely, because like I said, you speak my speak in terms of these issues really need to be brought to the forefront. And because we're always playing that role, Because that's the other thing about, those of us and some of us, I don't want to generalize, but that's the other thing. And because of what I'm getting ready to describe is why more people won't come to church. Those of us who go, we try to make everything look as if everything is perfect.
Right.
And so for those who don't go, they look at that as, well, I can never be that. I can, I do this, I do that. I could never be like that person there. Not knowing that person there has gone through hell.
We all have struggled.
Right.
Everybody.
That's exactly. So that's what I'm saying. The pretension and the I don't want to use the word hypocrisy because it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's because people don't want to, put their business out there. I get that. But at the same time, how do you now, all right, you said you were self-identified as an addiction at 9. If you aren't willing to admit that and talk about that and write about that, how would you be able to help another little girl that might be struggling with that right now when she's 9?
Well, first of all, like you said earlier, we have to admit it. And one thing that before I wrote Taboo, I had to go and speak in Atlanta. I spoke at a school, and it was just that wasn't even the subject. And I went right into it. I said, I know you're in here, and I know you're being molested, and I just went into the thing that it's not right and it's not your fault.
Right.
And you have to tell, because if it's not you, they're probably going to molest someone else or they're going to continue to molest you. And you have to tell. And so that was the thing that I went in there and I said it, because sometimes you feel like it's your own fault. You feel like you're scared of what's going to happen to me or what's going to happen to my mom. The unknown is worse than what the physical action time is. So that's the thing that I had to say, but the thing is, I understand why children don't tell, because they don't know what will happen next.
Right.
So they suffer through it, yet become adults, still dealing with that thing that happened to them at 9, 11 years old, or feel like unprotected, don't trust me, and, those types of things. Don't trust my family. One day you lash out, you left me with him, and you knew I didn't well, I didn't know. How did you... how was I supposed to know? You knew, it creates so much. It's a ripple effect.
No, it really is. And the same phenomenon that we were talking about earlier, where the kids feel like they were the cause of the divorce, is the same phenomenon with molestation. The kids feel like they were the ones that brought it on. It was their fault.
Right.
So that's why they struggle. And oh my God, don't let it be a situation where they do tell the mother and the mother denies it. That makes it even worse.
I addressed that in the book.
See, I'll tell you, I'll have a good time reading this one because you're right on point. Because
that right there is called rug burn.
Right.
When she sleeps, whoever you tell and they sweep it under the rug, okay, here come rug burn.
Rug burn. I know that's right. But I mean, that is double hurt. Because now I've already suffered the physical piece, and I did tell somebody, and then they're going to try to tell me, no, that didn't happen. Or no, oh, you must be making that up. You're the one that's lying. And when I tell you it starts screwing people up psychologically, it does. One of the reasons we have so many people walking around here that are screwed up psychologically is because we have not effectively dealt with these various issues that you describe. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I mean, you start talking about addictions, you start talking about infidelity, you start talking about molestation, intimacy issues in general. Because one of the bullets you had up there, my wife doesn't want to have sex with me anymore, it's pleasing your mate. Sometimes, and men generally don't realize this, but because they think, I know how we think. We think it's all about us. They're like, oh, if she don't want to have sex with me, it must be something I'm doing. I'm something. Not realizing that sometimes there might be something in the woman's history that is causing intimacy issues as to why she doesn't necessarily enjoy sex. Or it doesn't have anything to do with him. It's just that there was
sometimes there's a trigger. There's a smell. There's a thing that she saw on TV that day. There's different triggers.
Right. And see, I struggle with that myself. I mean, I had to come to learn that myself. Like, okay, let me back off and pull back. Let me see really. It could be something else going on that I'm not aware of. Rather than automatically assume, oh, you're turning me down. Oh, you don't want to be with me. Oh, you're not attracted to me anymore. Oh, you're not in it. And then in some instances, it might be. It might be. You know what? I just ain't into you. Know what? I think there was that movie. I forget the name. I'm trying to think of the title of the movie. She's just not that into you, or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But there was a whole movie title about that whole thing. She's just not that into you. I mean, there's, you got to deal with that. But again, Those are things that either needs to be brought up or discussed or this, that, and the other. And the other thing about it, because I really kind of, that's why when I saw you like romance and relationship, I was like, I gotta get it wrong. Because I read a lot of books in this area and had experiences and talked to enough people. But there are times when the man thinks that if he do this, he'll get that. It's kind of like a quid pro quo thing. Kind of like, if I do this, you're going to do that. When that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Everybody needs to kind of be clear on what the expectations are.
Right.
And a lot of times it's not that the expectations are not clear. And so that's an issue. I mean, there are so many issues that go on that it's just not as cut and dry as either you are or you aren't. Either you're having it or you're not having it. Either you're doing it or you're not doing it. There's so many other things that goes into it that are not addressed. And a lot of times, like that's what I was going to say a couple minutes ago with the books, they're saying a lot of times when you go into the traditional marriage counseling, if you will, a lot of times they're designed to bash the man or either to make the man come down to this woman for the most part. Because what a lot of times when you go to the marriage counseling, they're saying the marriage counseling really is kind of trying to make the man the emotional side. Like you were just talking about how your mom was saying, or you were saying, men will always beat you physically, but they can't beat you emotionally. A lot of the marriage counseling is trying to get the men to beat the women emotionally. And that causes an issue because the woman's like, wait a minute, I don't need another me. I don't need another emotional. But if the marriage,
as emotional as I am, then I'm going to respect you for that.
Exactly. And a lot of the marriage counseling, traditional marriage counseling, that's kind of where they, okay, well, if you just do this more with her, if you just talk to her more, if you just let her know your feelings out, if you just be more sensitive, if you just be a little softer, if you just be, for the most part, the traditional marriage counseling is turning the man into another woman, which just what you just said. And that's what the research shows as well. The women don't want another woman. Like, I don't need another emotional. I don't need him to be that. Even though a lot of women will say, I want a sensitive man. I don't think that's what they're talking about when they say that.
We're more saying that we need someone to understand.
Right. Absolutely right. That's exactly what it's saying. But a lot of people get that twisted. I mean, like I said, I've kind of studied this, so I have an appreciation for it. A lot of times, and because again, if you're men from Mars, women from Venus, whichever way that goes, men for the most part want to go in and fix things. They want to, that's just kind of the way we're wired. We want to go in and fix it and sit down and go do what we got to do. Women, for the most part, whenever they're expressing themselves, they don't want the men to fix it. For the most part.
We want you to hear it.
Yes.
But you guys are calculating, okay, 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
Like, let's just go ahead and end this. But we want to say 2 + 2, okay, carried. You know what I'm saying? We want to explain this whole thing.
Right.
And you guys are like, okay, this is already an open and shut thing. We're like, no, it's not open and shut. Okay, how do we get to 2? Okay, 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, then the other 1 + 1 = we have to go through that whole thing, and we just want you to understand the whole 1 + 1 = 2, and then this 1 + 1 = 2, and then put those two together, and then those 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
We want to go through that part. 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, then that's finished. Let's go ahead and, solve.
You're absolutely right. But that's exactly, for the listening audience, she's absolutely right. For the man, it's like, okay, 2 + 4, let's go. And when the woman wants to go through the process, okay, well, and she wants to talk that through. So men, whenever they say we want you more citizens, really are kind of just saying, look, don't try to fix it for me unless I ask you to, but hear me out.
Right. Just hear me. Just let me get this out of me.
Right.
And then give me the solution. But at this moment, I need you to nod your head or say yes or what. Give me some type of reaction. And then after I get it out, then give me, all right, well, 2 + 2 = 4. Then give me that. But do not cut me off. Do not wait. Do not come in and say, you know what, or don't make me feel dumb or don't make me feel used to, don't do that.
Right.
But then now it's going to be between me and you.
That's exactly right.
Now we're going to get this off, but now I'm through with whatever happened at work. Now it's about you, so this is what you're trying to say.
That's exactly right. So for the men in the audience, that is kind of what they're talking about. And ladies, yes, that's it. And so for the men who kind of, like I said, I kind of studied it and still get it wrong, even though I've studied it, and even though I still every now and again mess it up. But at least I'm trying on the path. And like you said, the mistakes that you made in the first relationship or first marriage, you don't want to make the same mistakes in the second one, or in the next relationship or what have you. And the hope is, all right, if you kind of got a feel for what you don't want, you'd have a better appreciation for what you do want. That's what you'll look for. And it's 8 o'clock. I need to do a couple things, but there's a couple more areas I want to hit in this, because this whole thing, you said marriage is a wedding gift from God, and you're saying here God calls marriage good and the marital bed undefiled. That's absolutely right. This is what I want to talk about as we go into the 8 o'clock hour, because again, at 8 o'clock I have to do the same thing I did at 7. And this is not necessarily just church people, but and we're not picking on church. We're not picking on church folks. But I've been in church my entire life. I just said the other night, my mother carried me in her womb at this church, and I never left. So I know how folks can be. So where I want to go in the 8 o'clock hour is this whole notion of sex is not a dirty word. Sex is not dirty. Sex in and of itself was ordained by God, or is ordained by God. And this whole notion, like you're saying, marriage is a gift from God. And the whole sex is a gift from God. There's just that where it gets messy and dirty and all this, is whenever you start doing things that are outside, like she's talking about the infidelity and the molestation and this, that, and the other. That's where it kind of starts getting twisted. But for those of you who are married or what have you, and where I'm going is because you actually have some married couples, either the man or the woman, because I won't just say it's just the women, that will get into like, this is a duty. This is not something I like doing. I'm doing it only because. And that's where it gets messed up too. So we're going to go there in the 8 o'clock hour, and I'm going to go ahead and do top of the hour and do the weather and all that. And let somebody know if you haven't done so already. They got a hot discussion going on the Reading Circle this morning with author Tori Lynn. They're talking about taboo subjects that in my mind ought not be taboo. So let somebody know.
Check your inbox.
What's that?
Check your inbox really quick.
Oh, mail inbox? You mean which one? Instagram, mail, which one?
Facebook.
Facebook. Okay, will do. Hang on, let me get the 8 o'clock done. Facebook, I'll have to log on there, but I sure will.
WPSC, Wayne, New Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, GoBrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey.
This is
The innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless.
They have awesome variety.
The kick-ass.
I love Brave New Radio.
The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
Here's your North Jersey weather report.
All right, in North Jersey, we can expect it to be a high of 81 today, and we're going to move back to a low of 62. There's a chance of rain today. Then tomorrow, 79 is a high, 62 is a low, expected to be partly cloudy. Going to be overcast on Monday, 75 is a high, 62 is a low. Rain on Tuesday, 70 is a high, 63 is a low. On Wednesday, rounding out the forecast, it's going to be overcast as well. 79 is a high, 60 is a low. It's not clearing up until Thursday. And then from Thursday on through the Monday, the 25th, nothing but sunshine coming our way. However, between now and Wednesday, it is going to be rainy, cloudy, and overcast.
WP 88.7 FM.
Brave New Radio.
Brave New Radio.
So, Tori, I just checked I'm assuming you're talking about your friend requests?
No, the inbox. I sent you a message. You didn't see it?
Not on the inbox. I saw the friend request. I haven't seen anything on the inbox.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I might have to try to send it again.
So, wait. Yep, wait. Nope. I thought, nope, I don't see it yet. It might not have come through yet.
It says sent. Yeah, it says sent. It was like 30 minutes ago.
I see Tori Lynn wants to connect with you. I got that. And let's see. Let me see if it's in one of the... And you sent it to Marc Medley or to the Reading Circle? Which one?
Marc Medley.
Okay. And no, it didn't come through yet.
It was like 30 minutes ago. Check your other boxes.
Okay, I will. And
I had a question about what we're doing.
Oh, like what we're doing right now? You had a question?
Yeah, I had a question to you about what we're doing.
Oh, and that's okay. Now I'm a little bit lost. I mean, what we're doing in terms of how the show is going to run?
No. It was more like I was saying I was on Facebook Live, and I said, wait a minute, I cut it back off because I didn't get your permission first to record our.
Oh yeah, you can record it.
Our interview.
Oh, by all means, please record it. You could ask me.
Okay, I had took it back off, and I was like,
by all means, please record it. But I mean, the good news is I'm recording it, so you're going to get an MP3 copy as well as on my YouTube link. It'll be there as well. But yeah, by all means, please record it.
Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, that was an easy one. All right, so if you've just joined me, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you let somebody know that Tori Lynn is on the line with me, and we have a hot discussion going because, first off, the title of her second book, the latest book, is called Taboo, and it deals with this whole notion of something that I've brought up in the past, particularly when we're dealing in the church, is that there ought not be anything such as taboo in there. Every topic that goes on in life ought to be dealt with in the church. Matter of fact, when we start talking about marriage and sex, if you ever want to read the poem or a love story, read the Book of Solomon. Read Song of Solomon. Read how homeboy gets in there, him and what's her name start going back and forth with each other. Now, it's in biblical ease, but they are flirting with each other and going back and forth. He talking about the doves and the this and the that and the deer and the dog. I mean, he be getting into it. You have to understand Bible speak, but that's what one of those Song of Solomon things is all about.
Yep, I'll put that in Taboo.
See, there you go. I'll tell you, we write down that same line. But what I was saying prior to sharing the weather and all that stuff with you is in some instances, you will get into this situation where religious folks or church folks and I'm not picking on just them because there's some people not in the church that say the same thing. For some reason, they think sex is a dirty word or the act of sex is dirty or this, that, or it's not. Because, like we were teasing earlier, well, how did we all get here then? And how did you may have whatever title you have within the church, but if you have children, how did they get here? Okay, so, but you have those, and this bugs me in terms of whenever the mindset is, okay, this is a duty. This is something I don't want to do it. I don't like to do it. But since I'm your wife or since I'm your husband, I have to do it. Now, I can tell you right now, if that's the mindset, it's going to mess everything up. Because one, there's going to be no passion there. It's going to, the whole energy, the whole thing that goes along with that is not there. Because the mindset is, this is something I have to do as a duty. Anybody know when you have to do something as a duty, it's a little bit different than when you have to do something that you want to do. I mean, I was in the military. Now, I love being in the military for what I went in there for, which was to be. I was in the Air Force. I went in there because I love airplanes, I love aircraft, I love jet engines. That's what I went in there for. So whenever I was doing that kind of stuff, working around the planes, I was cool. But now, had I been sent on the battlefield, that would have been a duty. That's not something I would have been saying, look, yeah, I really want to get out there with a gun and go kill somebody. That wasn't my thing. That would have been a duty, but I'd have had to do it. Whole different mindset whenever something is a duty versus something that is a passion and that you want to do. So the reason I bring that up is first off, there's nothing wrong with sex. That's the first thing. Right. That anybody needs to get that out of their mind that there's something wrong with it, because it's not.
It's
all right.
A beautiful thing.
It really is. Now, where it gets messy and messed up is when we start talking about some of these issues. Now, when you get, a 40 and 50-year-old man messing with like a 3-year-old, yeah, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, okay? Definitely.
When you get
a 40, 50-year-old man mess with somebody under 18.
Right. I'm giving you the extremes because it's like I tell people all the time, like I said, I'm the older I get, the less filter I have and the more transparent I become. But there's two audiences, which I know why that's got to be something mental. There are two audiences that do not attract me, none whatsoever. And I don't understand whenever I hear stories of molestation or rape. When you start talking about an 80, 90-year-old woman or a 3 or 4 or 5 or 10-year-old child, with a man that's in middle age or what have you, or either young, like a 20-year-old raping a 90-year-old makes no sense to me. That's why I know it's got to be mental. When you start talking about a 40-year-old fooling around with a 5-year-old, or like you said, a 10 or a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old, makes no sense to me whatsoever, because the question becomes, well, why couldn't you get a woman in your age group?
Right.
Why wouldn't you be with somebody around your age, at least within a 5 to 10 to 15-year period? I mean, even that's kind of beginning to stretch it. But you know what? Why are you with the two extremes? Because again, as the principle with the Megan's Law, every time someone who has been incarcerated or in prison for anything dealing with any of the sexual issues like child molestation or whatever, the principal gets a notice from the prosecutor's office letting you know that they've moved in the neighborhood, because they want you to be aware, because you have kids walking past their houses. So they want the principal to be aware that now this person, and as a part of Megan's Law, they had to do that legally. They want you to know that this person is now in the neighborhood. Again.
Okay, I know that.
And I think it's across the United States, but I know in New Jersey it is. But I'm almost sure that's a federal law. I'm almost sure it is. It's called Megan's Law. But you would be surprised when I get those letters and they put the person's picture on there, and I sit there and look at how many of these men have messed with a child. I mean, we're talking like a 40, 45-year-old man messing with an 8-year-old. Like, are you kidding me? Ooh. I mean, and they get into descriptive of what it was all about, whether it was sodomy, this, that, and the other, sodomized this, did that. There. Like, are you kidding me?
Right, absolutely. Like, where is your head?
Right. So that's why I know it's got to be something mental here. That's got to be something like you're crazy.
Right.
All right. But outside of things like that, if you're in the marital relationship, this, that, and the other, sex is a good thing. It was meant to be. It was not meant to be something that was bad. It was not. That's why it is what it is. That's why the attractiveness is there. That's why it feels the way it feels. God knew what he was doing whenever he put that together. All right. So for us to kind of bastardize it, for us to kind of make it something that is not, that's where everything kind of really goes awry. And on the end, the reason we're having this conversation this morning is that when it does go awry, the issues need to be dealt with.
Right.
So as you were writing, Taboo, because it's funny that a lot of things that we're talking about, and I'm really going to enjoy reading through this one. A lot of things that we're talking about is coming up. What was it like for you now, kind of putting some of this stuff, again, kind of like my first question earlier, what was it like for you putting this stuff on paper?
What was it like for me putting this stuff on paper? I really didn't think about that at the time. I just more was... As far as taboo, let me just hit on one because both of the books are two different books about two different subjects. But for as far as taboo was more of a fun thing, because when I told some of the people that I was writing it, and then when I was on social media and do Q&As and stuff like that, because that's more of what taboo is. Taboo is more of a self-help. It's not. It doesn't even have a storyline, and so I addressed that. And that's what a couple of people had came to me and said, Tori, I didn't see the storyline. And I said, well, if you look at page 6, I said, this is a collection of polls, surveys, stories. It is not, it's more of a self-help or, something to relate to, because it wasn't just about me. And I didn't want to just put my story in there. I wanted to put a collection of stories in there so other people can know, okay, well, this is the opinion of a lot of men, or this is the opinion of a person, or this is somebody's experience. So it was more, taboo was more fun to me because I love the subject of sex. I love talking about sex. I love talking about intimacy. I love talking about romance. And that's what I've decided to get my master's in is counseling, but I also want to, with the side of, I'm drawing a blank. It's early. I'm not a morning person.
That's
but
okay.
The side of human sexuality.
You're doing fine. And because, I was going to say now, in general, and again, I don't like to generalize, and actually for me, I find it refreshing because, again, this is back to that role-playing thing again. This is back to what I was just talking about with church folks, but women tend to do it as well. And what I'm about to say is, I heard you say, I love talking about sex, I love talking about romance, I love talking about relationships. It's rare that I have a female that will even say the word sex. I mean, not that they don't enjoy it or want it, they pretend like they don't. Because most of the time you hear men talking about sex all the time, but it's rare that you'll hear a female that'll just flat out say, yeah, I love sex as well. It's every now and again it will, but it's rare. A lot of times the men, like as Donald Trump said, locker room talk or whatever, a lot of times the men get into the locker room talk, this, that, and the other, but it's rare that you'll get a woman that'll just flat up admit and say what you just said. When the truth be told, a lot of them feel that way, they just don't say it. Funny enough, yesterday, I'm in the playground at this missile because I have a post at the end of the day to make sure the kids are moving through the playground in the parking lot, making their way home. So this woman walks through and her t-shirt said, "Sex with me, priceless." It was a play on that whole MasterCard campaign. And she had, it's "Sex with me, priceless." And she walks up and I just bust out laughing. I said, first off, I can't believe you're wearing a t-shirt. But secondly, I got to find that t-shirt with somewhere. But it was just the fact that it was a woman walking through there. And it's not like she was the most attractive woman in the world, the youngest woman in the world. Actually, she was a little bit older. That made it even the funnier. But she was bold enough to wear it.
Right. What I've learned after 40 is I don't have a lot of filter, and I didn't have it before. But now that I'm 40, it's gotten even less filter-ish.
Right. Right.
Did I go making up words? I told you earlier. Yeah, I have less filter-ish. I'm gonna use my word. I'm gonna use my word filter-ish. And so, like I said, when I was writing Taboo, and even the reviews I got from it, a lot of people said I didn't know that so much stuff was in the Bible regarding sex.
Right.
Yes, I'm going to find it out because I love sex. So, of course, if I love sex, I'm going to look up all the stuff that have to do with sex in the Bible. So that's why I had so many scriptures in Taboo about sex, because that's my subject. I love talking about it. I love intimacy. I love relationships. I love all the type of conversation. And like I said, I come from my family. The women in my family are very, very dominant. So, like, my grandmother was, and rest her soul, I wish that she was here when I was writing Taboo, because she had a lot of opinion about sex. So me and her, we would just sit and talk. It wasn't no porn talk. She was just grandma. You could talk to her about anything.
Right.
And one of the chapters in Taboo I talked about was about the man that said, "My wife don't want to have sex with me anymore." And she was the one that helped me with that. She was just like, "Oh, she don't like him no more. I'm going to tell you something now. Ain't nothing new under the sun."
Right.
And she said, did she just suddenly stop performing on him, or did he do something? Because if he did, he needs to track back.
Right.
Where that why is, and he needs to fix it back where it started. So I was like, man, that was grandma. That was so genius, But,
and what's crazy about that? Again, like I was telling you earlier about the various texts and books, and because I kind of studied this whole area too. The more, what I found is, and I've kind of found it even true for myself, the more the man tries to please the woman, the less attracted she is to him.
What?
It's like this crazy paradox. When I say please, I mean really please. I mean really, like, I'm not talking about just the normal niceties. I mean kind of like the one you're saying, the one you can dominate and disrespect.
Oh,
right.
I mean, that's kind of, but hey, now, Mark, I don't want, no battle here.
When I say please, like I said, I'm not talking about the everyday niceties, but I'm talking about the more the man allows himself to be disrespected, the more he allows himself to be dominated by the woman, the less she actually respects him. And the less she respects him, the less she really wants to be with him. Right. That's what I mean. I'm not talking about being nice to your significant other, to your wife. I'm not talking about the normal niceties. I'm talking about the extreme. The more he goes out of his way and really becomes her doormat, the less attractive he is to her.
Now let's make sure we're okay.
Yeah, I think we are, because you were saying something earlier about the disrespect and the dominating.
Right. So the man that we could just dominate and run over, yes.
Right.
But the man that is nice, like I addressed this in Taboo, and there was one guy, he was in the friend zone, because I just was not attracted to him. He was nice. I thought he was too nice, so I wasn't attracted to him.
Right.
He was cute. If he thought I wanted something, I had it. He would show up at my door with it. I mean,
that's the one I'm talking about. There you go. Okay. We're talking the same. That's the one we're talking about. But that's not mentally what people would think. They think it would be just the reverse. Like what you would think, the more that he does, the more she would like him. But exactly what you just said, that friend zone. He's just
Wait a minute, let me finish. So this is what I addressed in Taboo. I did not like him initially because I thought he was too nice. And that was the thing. I was like, oh, man, I'm just going to be able to run this dude over, and then it's going to be a wrap for him. I'm not going to have respect for him, and I'm going to kick him to the curb anyway. So I just tried not to take him down that road. But he was so determined. It was just like a project for him. Like, I am going to get this girl. And no matter how much he did for me, no matter how much, like I said, he spoiled me rotten, I have to say. And it was just like at a certain point, like, dude, stop. Because now I'm starting to feel guilty. And then after a while, he won me over because he was so nice. And that was just something I just really was not expecting. Not only was he nice, but he would not let me dominate him.
Okay, right. Bingo. Right there.
Now, and that was the difference because at a certain point, I had to respect that. Like, oh, wait a minute. So, hold on. I was used to where I was able to dominate men or, I could lose respect for men in a second, in a heartbeat. This one was not only nice, he was caring, he was, good to my children, but he would not allow me to dominate him.
Then you know what?
He did it in a way that I was still able to respect. Like, he wasn't mean to me. He was not mean at all. He moved himself from the friend zone to the relationship zone but I talked about it in the book, so I talked about how we ended up breaking up later, but now I know there is a such thing as moving out of the friend zone to the relationship zone. It's very possible to do that.
Absolutely right. What you just described was he got the right balance of alpha and beta. He got the right balance of alpha and beta because, like you said, I can't dominate this one. And see, that is what kept the attraction going there. Because had you been able to dominate, he'd have never moved out of the friend zone. That's what I was trying to say. So, right. So that's what I was saying. Yeah, we are definitely on the same page because, again, like I said, people in their minds think just the reverse. Like, well, the nicer he is and the more he lets it down, the more she's going to want him. Not true. The more he tries to please, and she just kind of sees that as, he's too squeezy. The less that she becomes attracted to him. So yeah, we're definitely on the same page. No question. Because what you just described was a good balance between alpha and beta. Like the fact that he was that nice, but at the same time, you ain't running over me, sister. That's what kept that moving. So, we're definitely on the same page there. So absolutely. So yeah, it sounds like it's a fun book for those in the listening audience. There should not be, like, you've heard Tori and I talk this morning, and it's a radio, so we've kept it clean. But we've had the discussion. You wouldn't believe, Tori, how many people would be afraid to even have this discussion. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they said the word sex. Like, you would be surprised how many women, I can't believe that woman got on there and said she loved sex. How do you strike that balance between being able to
Okay, Taboo is such a sexual book without being a pornography book. It's such a sexual book. Hey, Cynthia. That it could go into, it could have been a porn book, but I only hit the sexual part at a certain time. So it's not so the whole book is not about pornography. The whole book is not about sex. The whole book is not about oral. It's not about, I described, the male member, my baby's in the bed with me.
No, I understand. But see, that's my point. At no point of our discussion did pornography come to my mind. I'm looking here on the website at the cover of the book. At no point did that come to mind. That's my point. People get those things confused. And because they do, that's why a lot of times, that's why it becomes taboo. They get these things confused. And and I know I know that's for the most part why women probably get into this whole pretend thing. How do you strike the balance between being able to make that statement that you made as a female and not being appeared to be or seem what quote unquote people would call loose or a floozy? Because the fact that you said that does not conjure that up in my mind. But for somebody would say, oh, well, she's just a floozy. Why would she be just a floozy because she's saying she loves sex? I don't get that.
Well, because we're still in this. Well, first of all, we know that anything that God said was good,
right?
Satan turned around and
right.
Now he's, say he changed. I'm gonna show you what's good or not. So he perverted a lot of things. So that's one thing. But that's why I addressed in Taboo that sex is a good thing. It is a gift. It's a gift from God. That's why the stuff feels so good. That's why your serotonin goes up.
Right.
That's why your happy feeling goes up because of it. That's why headaches go away. That's why. But if you do it when like my grandmother said, you have to make sure her mind is clear, because if you go in, you finna do it to her, and she's go. Like I said, with my ex-husband, we were already separated, but so I was still able to have sex with him just because I enjoyed the act of it. But as far as like being emotionally, when he raised up and said, "Who are you thinking about?" Okay, well, you know what I'm saying, I was still able to do the act, but I was still able to think about somebody else because I was falling out of love with him.
Right.
But as far as like my grandmother said, let me see, I lost my thought. I need to be tested for ADHD. But anyway, the thing I talked about in Taboo is just, like I said, the church is not addressing is that it is such a good thing. It's such a wonderful thing. And that is not a bad thing.
Right.
Like you said, the Song of Solomon, they went in and they went a little deeper. Some people could read it and just read it like, okay, he was talking about the Twin Mountains.
Right. Right.
We know what the mountains are. Come on now. We know what Twin Peaks are.
Right.
Or when he goes into the smell of her or whatever.
Right.
Like, okay, we know what a smell is. We know what a scent is. Now, I was hoping it wasn't the freak in me trying to read into stuff. But then the more I talk to other people.
No, it wasn't. Because it's exactly what you read into it.
Right.
No, it is.
Yeah, and so that's why it's just so many. And like I said, I had a book review from a book club, and they were saying they did not know it was so many things in the Bible that had to do with sex. It's probably more than what I even caught. But I think that making love is a beautiful thing, and it's just so how God just designed it to do that, and the feeling, but your whole body get into it.
Right.
And I'm amazed at how many women are not getting to experience the vaginal orgasm.
Right.
So I think, and so I addressed it, and I addressed men on how they can get her to achieve that.
And that's an age-old problem. That's another one, nothing new under the sun. That's an age-old problem. But part of that is, like your grandmother said, in the mind. Right.
I think that it's just and then, like I said, that's what I was saying earlier about my grandmother when she said, Tori, she said the man has to be able to make sure her mind is clear. You know, like I said, my grandmother and I, we would talk all the time. And if she's already pissed, even though she can go through the act of sex, she can go through the act of it, but she could still be meant like, okay, once you roll over, like, don't touch me.
Right.
You know,
that's right.
On the steam of the bed. And just got, I guess, y'all just was warned a few minutes ago, but then after it's over with, let me sleep on the steam and don't touch me and I won't touch you. Let's put this barrier between us. But a turn on for women is when she's not mentally exhausted, or when, you know, shoot, I'm gonna say it. If the bills are paid,
right,
that's one mental exhaustion.
Right. That's absolutely right.
How you gonna expect her to get wet if she got to figure out how they're gonna pay everything?
Right. You can't. There you go. You can't get no more plain than that.
I'm trying to put my filter back on. But
that's making it plain. That's making it plain. It is, and it's the truth. I mean, but that's again there is nothing wrong with this very same discussion being held within the walls of a church. That's my point. The same type of discussion. And my hypothesis is, if within the walls of the churches more discussions like this was had, you would have better marriages. You would have better everything. Like you said, single, engaged, divorced, what have you. You would have better relationships, period, if folks got real. My point in this whole thing with taboo is you got a whole bunch of folks acting as if these things are not occurring, or they don't think these thoughts, or they don't do these things, or what have you. And because they act that way, you throwing people who don't come to church or out in the world, as they say, off, because they think something is really wrong with them, not realizing that the person in the church is not much different.
No. There are some big, huge freaks in the church.
Yeah.
There are some big, huge ones in the church. And because it's not about being in the church or out of the church. It's more about, it's more about somebody chiming in. Her name is Tiana. She's an author as well. And hers says no romance without finance.
Right.
So that's, but it's not about who's in the church and who's out of the church. Being a freak is just being a freak, period. So you just have to sometimes, being in the church, sometimes we may have to mask it. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't want to be perceived as, man, what if he thinks I'm a bad person? What if he, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, but if we have these discussions and we're okay with knowing that sex is something from God, making love is a gift from God, this is normal.
But right, you're absolutely right. And that's why I was saying earlier, for me, it should be something that's viewed as fun. That should be a fun time, right. Playful time between the man and the woman, whatever. It's fun. It should not be viewed as a duty, something that has to be done because I'm trying to comply. It should not be said. That should be something that's fun. Something that, so if you're swinging, I don't like, okay, I know we use the term freak playfully, but I mean, if you want to swing from the chandelier, hey, that's you. And if you're having fun and enjoying each other with that, then so be it.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, just a second. Huh? I didn't know you were awake, Aaron. Go on upstairs. If you knew you were awake, why didn't you get last night, I heard you talk. I wasn't talking last night.
So as you can hear, Tori's daughter came up and she's awake as well.
She slept in the bed.
So again, that's why I'm saying what I'm saying in terms of, and that's why the book attracted my attention, because that is an area that should be fun. That should not be something that is hated. And if it's hated, then you need to discuss that and do what you need to do with that also. But that should be a time that's fun.
And I think I had a couple that read the book together and they gave me their feedback.
Right.
And they, first of all, they said, I want to, Eric, go out right now. Because now I can talk now that you're awake. I can really I'm going to try to put my filter back on. Shut the door, baby. Shut the door. Oh, my gosh. So, oh, gosh, what was I saying?
You were saying about the couple that read the book, that gave you the feedback.
Yeah, so she said, Tori, first of all, I want to thank you for, after we read your book, for what happened after we read your book. So that's a huge compliment.
Right.
But also, there was a lady, and she was, and I tell this story all the time because it's one of the best compliments I've ever had. But there was a lady, and she was at the bowling alley, and I was still in the midst of writing the book. And she says, Tori, she said, I said, do you mind reading this part for me? And she said, okay. And I said, it's explicit. So would you read it for me? She said, okay. Well, my thing was, the thing was I had three things working against me, and that we were in a loud bowling alley.
Right.
She was over 60, over 65.
Right.
She was over 65. We're in a loud bowling alley. She's watching her grandkids bowl at the same time. So I had things working against me. Now, you following me?
I am.
Okay. So she started reading the woman's part. Is someone at the door? Okay, just a second. So she started reading the woman's part, and she said, ooh. And I said, what? What's wrong? She said, I felt a little tickle down there. So that was like huge. I was like, oh my God, yes. So that was like huge to me because, like I said, if it could get a
right.
lady that's almost 70
right.
at a bowling alley watching her grandkids,
right.
you know, that's what it was supposed to be.
So you reached your reader, that's for sure. Well, I tell you what, we've come down to the end, and what I do is at the end, I turn the microphone over you in terms of promoting, in terms of how can they get your books, Taboo and The Divorce, The Battle. Are you going to be speaking anywhere? How can they get you if they want you to come speak at their event? You can say anything with the exception of $1 amount, anything with the exception of the price. Everything else is fair game. So if you want to shout anybody out, you're going to be any place, you want folks to be anywhere in the Memphis area or whatever, because this is heard around the world, this is your chance to promote, where I turn the mic off and I turn it over to you.
Okay. I'm sorry, what's the website? My website name, I told you I haven't had coffee this morning. My website name is Author Tori. I was trying to think of what is the name of that thing. AuthorToriLynn.com. That's THORTORILYNN. And that is, yes, I am a speaker and an author. And all my what's the thing? The little the social media.
Yep.
Everything is under author Tori Lynn. So if you look up Tori Lynn, you're going to find a bunch of Tori Lynn. But if you look up author Tori Lynn, you'll find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and under Google. You just Google author Tori Lynn. I am available for speaking engagements and everything like that, book signings, and but I'm excited. I need to promote a lot more. There's a lady right here named Betty Brinson Haynes on social media chiming in that says older people need love too.
That's right. I know that's right.
Yeah, she's listening. So I just think that that was one of the best compliments in the world, is to know that this lady was. So I'm just glad that it could reach all ages and stages of life.
No, you know what? And the crazy thing is, so you just said you're 41. The older you get, the less old the older ages seem, if you followed that. So whenever you're in your 50s, 60 don't seem old. When you're in your 60s, 70 don't seem old. When you're in your 70s, 80 don't seem old. So the older you are, the less old the higher numbers seem to you. So I'm with that person. Older people need love too. Matter of fact, if all the equipment is still working, by all means, keep working it.
Keep coming.
That's absolutely right. But I have had a ball with this interview, as I knew I would. The book is Taboo. The other one is The Divorce, and the other one is The Battle. You can get them all. If you go to any of your local retailers, you can order them. Or if you have your electronic device, you want to download them, they're on Kindle. As like I said, when I leave here and get back home to my Wi-Fi, in terms of being able to do that on my iPad, I am going to make sure that I download both. Is The Battle downloadable too?
No, I haven't released that yet.
That's just coming October 2017. Okay, so the other two are out there, Taboo and The Divorce. I will definitely have those, can relate to both, and I encourage you to do the same. And again, the type of the discussions that Tori and I were having, well, nothing nasty, well, nothing dirty, I don't hear none of that. It was real. It's life. It is life. Like I'm going to constantly ask folks the question, well, how'd you get here? How'd your children get here? I mean, if you don't have any kids, you're here. So no matter which way you look at that, somebody had to have some sex for you to get here.
Ain't that it?
Right. So the discussions, me personally believe they need to be held in and out of the church walls. I think we need to have them with our older children, not necessarily because I remember my birds and bees discussion was with my mother and father around the kitchen table, and they said, we're gonna break it down to you two ways. We're gonna give you the clinical terms, and we're gonna give you the street terms. So, and we're gonna translate it for you. So when you hear this means that. And we had that discussion around the kitchen table. I mean, so yes, those discussions need to be had in order to keep folks out of trouble. And even when you have them, folks are gonna get in trouble. But the bottom line is, it's life. Like she was just talking about Songs of Solomon. Yeah, Solomon, they go in. They do. Like for Bible scholars out there, if you need somebody to translate for another version for you, if we were to translate Song of Solomon into street terms, the kids would be like, oh man, I mean, it would be just as bad as some of these raps that we hear. It's not that much different. So I appreciate the fact that you rose with me early this morning, calling from Memphis, Tennessee. Had a blast. Like I said, I've got to get to that area, because before I go, I have got to get to I got to get on the grounds of that whole incident. And because years ago, the first time I went to the King Center in Atlanta, I went out to that tomb. It was like around 6:00 in the morning, because I was leaving that same day, and I was going to a church service, and I said, okay, before I go to church and before I have to fly out of here, I got to go to the King Center. And it was like 6:00 in the morning. And Tori, when I tell you, when I stepped on those grounds, it was surreal.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it's going to be that same way for me whenever I get to the Lorraine. Just to be in the area or the place where that assassination occurred. I'm sure it's going to be that way for me. But I thank you so much. And I've had a blast. This is recorded. I will get the links out to you. Feel free to do whatever you'd like with them in terms of sharing them on your social media sites. It will be archived on my YouTube site. But this was a fun discussion, as it should have been, in terms of especially the sex piece and the divorce piece. Yes, it's painful. Yes. Divorce is painful. It is. And
yes, it is.
And so we kind of covered both ends of the spectrum, the fun side and the not so fun side. So have a wonderfully blessed day, week, and I'll be in touch with you a little bit later on with the links.
All right.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. Take care now.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye now. All right. That wraps up the Reading Circle. Had a fun discussion as I kind of knew it would be whenever I knew the topic of the subject matter. And again, I'm like her. I'm kind of like, she said she was doing the master's in the human sexuality. I probably wouldn't mind doing a master's in that area either, only because it's an interesting subject. And I know how people feel about it and how people think. They get it all twisted. And see, I'm not one, I don't get that area twisted. I really don't. It is what it is.